اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أمن يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء 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 أمن يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء. أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه. أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه. أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم إنه ليس لي علم بموضع رزقي وإنما أطلبه بخطرات تخرج على قلبي فأجول في طلبه البلدان فأنا فيما أنا طالب كالحيران لا أدري في سهل هو أم في جبل أم في أرض أم في سماء أم في بر أم في بحر وعلى يدي من ومن قبل من وقد علمت أن علمه عندك وأسبابه بيدك وأنت الذي تقسمه بلطفك وتسببه برحمتك. اللهم فصل على محمد وآله واجعل يا ربي رزقك لي واسعا ومطلبه سهلا وما أخذه قريبا ولا تعنني بطلب ما لم تقدر لي فيه رزقا فإنك غني عن عذابي وأنا فقير إلى رحمتك. فصل على محمد وآله وجد على عبدك بفضلك إنك ذو فضل عظيم.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We are very fortunate to have Brother Imranali, Hussein Khaki, who is our own boy. He was born here and studied here and went for further studies to UK. He is a very well-known Quran reciter as well as a Quran teacher and has got a very vast knowledge of Quran. Today he will be talking about creating a Quranic family. I will ask him to come forward and start his session, but just a small reminder that we will be having a questionnaire from both the ladies and gents, and Imran will be guiding us when to ask him the question. Bismillah.
Thank you so much. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Coming back to Mombasa is always a nostalgic feeling. You know, when you come, try and retrace your steps at home, going to school to see your classroom, going and buying your favorite snacks when you're young, the crackles or the dairy fresh, coffee milkshake was my favorite, or the masala sticks, or going to Blue Room and getting that chocolate special. But one thing that doesn't remain the same is prices, unfortunately. I remember I used to buy the chocolate special for 45 shillings. And then it went up by 10 shillings, and that was my whole weekly allowance gone. So I had to make a decision. Do I eat every day at break, or do I save that food till the end of the week and buy myself an ice cream? But today is like over 200 shillings, so back then I would have never eaten anything for a few weeks if I wanted to have an ice cream. But it's an honor, but at the same time very embarrassing for me to have this talk, because most of you, if not all of you, I've learned from, and in one shape or the other. So please forgive me if it's something that you've taught me already. But inshallah, the aim is so that we can all improve and create a Quranic family. So this session, I'd actually delivered it. I've delivered a few sessions online and delivered it in Nairobi last week. It was a 2-hour-long session, but don't worry, I won't keep you here for 2 hours. I'll try and get everything in half an hour as much as possible. But one thing that I'd really like for you to do is to be as engaging as possible. The more we can be as engaging as possible, the more we'll get out of it. Otherwise, it will be a very standard presentation. It won't be personalized. So let's try and be as engaging. So whenever I'm asking questions, please feel free to raise your hand. There'll be mics both in the ladies and gents. But also if we can be as quick as possible, because there's a lot to go through. So the objective of today's session, sorry camera, you'll have to follow me around, I can't sit still. The objective of today's session is to see how we can make the Quran a fun and active part of our life. Not just for the kids, for ourselves and for our whole family. So we'll go through a few things, so where we are at right now, what's our role as parents, understanding why all of this, and how is it possible to achieve this notion of living the Quran. So, just one person from the ladies, one person from the gents to quickly mention something about what's your name, how many kids you have, a brief summary about your family's journey with the Quran so far, what we're doing at the moment in terms of Quran, our victories and milestones, and what our challenges have been. Get quickly, just literally in a minute. If the ladies can go first. I know the men are a bit shy, but if you can think about what you want to say. If the ladies, you can give me a quick 30-second summary. This will help personalize the presentation, so I can give a few examples. Anyone from the ladies?
Okay. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam. Okay.
Sorry, my voice is not.
No worries.
My name is Ghulam Ali. I've got 3 kids. My family's journey with the Quran is like yours, and
Which
okay,
is?
maybe it's somewhat like yours. And what we are doing at the moment is trying to learn more and more as much as we can from the Holy Quran. There are so many milestones, I don't know where to, but there are challenges, mainly challenges as well. Challenges are that we are not getting as much audience as we are supposed to get for the Holy Quran. As the Holy Quran itself says that it's a book that has been kept aside. So if we can get as more people as possible.
What about individual challenges as a family?
Individually, time is a problem.
Oh,
yeah, quality time to spend with the Quran. But we try and make it a priority rather than something that is second.
Ahsantum. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you for that. Anyone in the ladies' side?
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu wa rahmatullah.
My name is Sakina. I've got 3 kids, ranging from age 9, 6, and 2. One of the challenges is different kids means you have different personalities, so they have different methods of learning Quran.
Yep.
One of them is very good at memorizing, but then when it actually comes to reciting Quran, it's a bit tricky. Another one, it's a mission to get her to sit down and recite Quran.
Yeah.
So I think one of the things that I would like to learn is methods of engaging the children, especially when they've got different personalities, and they all have their own different methods of reciting and learning Quran as well.
Ahsantum. Thank you so much for that. So, quite a few challenges. I think one thing is it's safe to say that these challenges are not just for Mombasa Jamaat, it's everywhere around the world. Time, different kids having different learning challenges. And we'll go through quite a few examples to see how we can incorporate all of this despite our busy schedule. But before that, I just want to tackle a few misconceptions. And this is very, very important to get our head around because it's something that across the board, obviously with my experience growing up in Mombasa, but also having spoken to quite a few people around the world, this is something that is a common denominator. The role of darsa and madrasa in school. So a lot of times what we'll do is we'll think consciously or subconsciously, we'll take our kids, we have this beautiful vision of our kids having reciting beautifully or having a good relationship with the Quran, and what we'll do is we'll try and find the best teacher around, or we'll send them to madrasa or school and think, okay, as long as they're having the best teacher around or they're going to madrasa, they will learn the Quran, or they'll become a good Quran reciter. But this is something that's very unsustainable. So what happens is we'll send our kids to Quran. They will recite Quran. Before it used to be every day, but now it's maybe once a week, twice a week, three times a week if we're lucky. But then what happens? Quran is something that it has to be a constant. It's something that has to be very consistent. And when you're just waiting for them to go to madrasa or wait for them to be with their malim, then it's something that we cannot push forward and they cannot progress as much as they would if it was a collective effort from home. The role of the fathers. Fortunately or unfortunately, I don't know what it is, but if it's a cultural thing or it's something that's innate in us, we feel that, okay, we're the breadwinners, most of the time we're working, okay, so the moms are with the kids at home, okay, so naturally they will teach them Quran, and we don't have to worry about that. Okay, alhamdulillah, it's worked till now, and it is working, but if it's just being pushed from one side and the fathers are not doing anything about it, then there's something lacking over there. And we'll notice that the kids will not get that undivided attention. So for example, if we want academically, we're all here, Jaffrey still is known for bringing the top grades, A stars, all of that, right? And if you look back, what it is that makes all those kids perform well, it's both a push from the mother and the father, right? Both. The father is there making sure the kid is studying. The mother is there every day. But when the father comes home, you're constantly asking, did you study, did you go to tuition, did you do this, that, the other? And if you see, it's a constant push from both the mothers and the fathers so that they can become good at what it is. And similarly, we as fathers, we have to really push and do our bit to make sure that there is that ambience and that environment at home so that our kids and ourselves can have the best relationship with the Quran. Extracurricular activities. So growing up in Mombasa, we would always have after school we'd have tuition, or we'd have sports. We'd be in the club 24/7. Alhamdulillah for that upbringing. And even nowadays there's all this push on extra tuitions or doing extra clubs and classes. And then when we have time, we may recite Quran. Or at the end, just before we go to sleep, we'll recite some Quran. But there are two things here. One is we're tired, our kids are tired. What are we going to do? We're going to mess around, right? And we're not going to sit still for longer. The second thing is, what message is that sending across? Everything else is a priority, and then if we have time, we'll recite some Quran. So this is something that it's not. It may be happening here, may not be happening, but just generically, this is what's happening around the world, and this is something that we need to change our priorities. Now, what's our role as parents? As parents, we constantly want the best for our kids. We want our kids to make sure that they're the perfect reciters, they have the best relationship with the Quran. But if we ourselves are not having that relationship with the Quran, if we ourselves are not reciting Quran constantly, we cannot demand that of our kids. So if we take an example of aromatherapy or agarbatti, for example, if you expect an agarbatti to give you nice scent or a nice fragrance, it itself has to have that scent itself, that essence, right? If it doesn't have that essence, then it won't be able to spread that beautiful scent. So similarly, if we want our kids to have that relationship with the Quran and be good reciters, we ourselves need to have that and need to inculcate that in ourselves, in our families. Everything around us in our family should have the aroma of the Quran. And then only will our kids grow to love the Quran. They will grow to appreciate the Quran. They will grow to prioritize the Quran. Otherwise, what is it? Nowadays, you'll hear all these stories. The kids are all answering back, "Oh, why aren't you reciting Quran? Or when was the last time you picked up the Quran?" Unfortunately, that is the case. But if we really want to have that impact, we need to show it organically from within. Otherwise, that's a constant battle. How many times have you tried to send your kids to a malim, for example, and they've answered back, or they say, I don't feel like doing it. I've done that so many times. I don't feel like reciting today. Or you just quickly recite 5 minutes and done. But if there's that love that's inculcated in the family, then naturally that's half your battle won, and you'll have less of those battles to win. You'll notice throughout the presentation the QR codes, and these are QR codes of examples that I've given. Because of time, I won't go through the videos, but feel free to scan the QR codes. I'll take it positively. I'll feel that you're taking pictures of me, and I'll have that good vibe. Feel free to scan the QR codes. Okay, so can't see the ladies, but raise of hands if you feel our approach for the Quran is all about recitation. Okay? Our approach with the Quran should be that my child must memorize the whole Quran. Our approach for the Quran should be my child must embody the Quran. Raise your hands. Okay? And none of the above? Why are we feeling shy? We need to be as engaging as possible. Okay, again. A. It's all about recitation. Raise your hands. My child must memorize the whole Quran. My child must embody the Quran. So the rest of you are none of the above? Okay. So I'm glad you agree with me. It's none of the above. Because our approach, first and foremost, before we go into all of these lessons and before we go into the memorization and all of that, should be about love. We need to ensure that we are approaching the Quran as something that we love. Because what happens is when you love something, you will be close to it or that person regardless, through thick and thin, whether you're tired or not, whether you're busy or not, you'll create that attachment. You'll remain attached to that thing or that person. And it's that love that binds you together. And we need to make sure that we love the Quran such that we are close to it, regardless of what is happening. We have that missing feeling. I was speaking to someone in Nairobi, and they were asking me, how do you create this love for the Quran? And I asked them, are you a coffee person? And they said, yeah. And I asked them, what happens if you go a day without coffee? Or maybe a day without cigarettes or something? You feel that there's something missing in your life. Or you have that craving feeling, right? So similarly, we need to create this craving feeling with the Quran such that we cannot live without it. And I'll go through exercises and ways and why we should be creating this craving feeling with the Quran. The Quran is a book of recitation, memorization. It's a book of guidance. It's a book of stories, rules. It's a book of inspiration and much, much more. I want you to keep this in mind because when we go through the examples, you'll see why I have mentioned all of this. But before we go into all of that, it's very important for us to realize and understand who the Quran is from. The Holy Quran, as we know, is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But let's try and think about it a bit deeply. You know when you want to, have you ever wondered when you hear about the story of Prophet Musa, for example? He was walking with his family and then he sees a fire in the hills and then he says, let me go and investigate. And then he goes to the fire and then all of a sudden, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking to him. Have you ever wondered what Prophet Musa felt when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala started talking to him? Or have you ever wondered what Prophet Muhammad felt when he received those revelations? And sometimes we don't because we feel it's something that's distant, it's not for us, right? But we can experience that feeling. Every time we open the Quran, these are words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has revealed this Quran for everyone. It's a book of guidance for everyone. He's brought us to this life for us to be able to get closer to Him, as close as possible to Him. And for us to be able to achieve success, we need a book of guidance. We need a set of laws. So similarly, if we want to achieve good results, for example, we will hold fast to our textbooks or exercise books. Or if we want to know how to operate a game or an equipment or something, there will be a guidebook. And that guidebook is there so that we can maximize that equipment. So similarly, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has revealed the Holy Quran to us for all of us as a book of guidance, so that we can know how to maneuver through life, so that we can get as close to Him as possible. And we need to understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is someone that is our Lord who wants us to really, really pass. We've all come across some teachers that were very nice and some teachers that are not so nice to us. Those teachers that were really nice, that were lenient, that really, really wanted us to do well, they would set an exam and they'll tell us, the exam is from these 5 pages. You read these 5 pages or these 20 pages or this whole textbook, from this textbook alone, you'll pass. Naturally, what will we do? We'll read that textbook or those pages, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us that this book is sent as a book of guidance. You keep that book close to you and you'll pass. So these are things that we need to remember. But we're human, we'll forget. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as a concept is intangible. We cannot see Him, we cannot touch or feel Him. But we need to try and make it as tangible as possible. Because as humans, we need to have something in front of us for us to remember, right? So we need to try and draw out lessons to make sure that we remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as much as possible. Now, how can we benefit from the Quran? Have we done an ice bucket challenge yet? Do we all know what the ice bucket challenge is? Yes? No? No? Okay, so the ice bucket challenge, a few years ago, they would do it for charity and they would nominate 5 of their friends to do this ice bucket challenge, and every time they do it, they nominate 5 friends until it becomes a viral thing. But what happens is they have a big bucket full of icy water and they pour it over themselves. But now just imagine that icy water is being poured on you. What's the feeling that you get? You feel sleepy, right? Or no? You wouldn't feel sleepy, you feel the opposite. You feel awake or you feel like jolted. But what happens if you wrapped yourself with all the plastic in the world? No skin showing, nothing. Would you feel that water? You wouldn't necessarily feel that. Maybe a bit, but you wouldn't feel that water. So similarly, the Holy Quran, our approach with the Quran, if we wrap ourselves with all the plastic in the world and we approach the Quran, oh, I don't have time, oh, 5 minutes, let me just quickly recite and start my day. Or I haven't recited Quran today, let me recite it and then I go to sleep so I don't feel guilty. Or I have to go and play and let me just do a bit before my parents keep on nagging me. Then we're wrapping ourselves with so much plastic that we're not feeling the Quran. We're not feeling the icy water from the Quran. However, if we approach the Quran in such a way that we're letting that icy water and that barakah and the blessings and the guidance from the Quran hit us, then we'll be able to get jolted and awakened and feel energized after that. So, what are the subconscious or the conscious barriers that we're putting on ourselves? What is the plastic that we're wrapping around ourselves for the Quran? A few things. So, you know, we're all Quran, you have to make sure you touch it with wudu, and it has to be respected. And yes, it's a book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have to respect it as much as we can. And sometimes what happens is with that respect, when we see our child walking towards the Quran and going towards the Quran, what's our natural reaction? What's our natural reaction? We'll take it away, right? Why? Because they'll tear it, or they'll disrespect it, they're not in wudu. But let's think about this. What's happening in the child's mind, okay? The child is thinking, okay, that's a book that my parents hold really dear to me. My family are constantly opening it, constantly reciting, constantly talking about it. There must be something interesting there. So naturally the baby or the child will go and go for it. But then we quickly take it away. And then what happens? What's the child thinking? The child is thinking that, okay, it's an important book because my family love it, they love reciting, they're constantly talking about it, but it's not for me because it's being taken away. That's subconsciously that's happening. We're doing it with the best of intentions because we have to respect the Quran. But sometimes when we're doing things for the right intention, but if we're not thinking it through, then it can have the adverse effect. So what do? We just give in and let the child tear the page? No, there are ways around it. So there are these small plastic Qurans that you can touch without wudu, or they're very bendable, so you're not afraid of tearing them. Or for example, we'll keep the Quran on the top of the shelf. Very good, because it's a book that we need to respect. But sometimes what happens is, out of sight, out of mind. And it'll come in sight or will come in mind until the month of Ramadan comes, and then we'll dust it off and then start reciting. So let's try, just with anything that we use post-it notes to remind ourselves, or we'll have alarms on our phone to remind ourselves of the important things in life. Let's try and use that and keep a special place, for example, in our house that's accessible, but it's a special place. We know that's the Quran place. So then we can constantly see it, but we're also giving it the respect it deserves. The next thing is that we need to, this example is very applicable here because we all grew up this way. With bankras, sitting on the bankras, reciting Quran, and we had certain malims with canes, and we'd make a mistake or we'd flinch a bit and we'd get beaten up. But gone are those days, alhamdulillah. But now we need to make sure that our kids have that positive association, because imagine if the whole childhood that kid was sitting on a bankra, fearful of making a mistake and they would get caned. What kind of association is going in their mind with the Quran? That Quran, I've been beaten up a lot because of that Quran. Would I want to touch it? Would I want to approach it voluntarily? Not really. So now we need to make sure we're creating positive associations for our families, for our kids, so that they want to constantly touch the Quran, feel the Quran, engage with the Quran. So there are a few things. Again, QR codes, feel free to scan them. So I'll give quite a few examples for young kids, teenage kids, older kids, ourselves, so then there's something for everyone. But I'll go through very quickly because I know there's a lack of time. So the first thing is identifying letters. We all have issues with identifying letters, pronouncing with the proper makharij. So what we do is open activity books and get them to read from the book. But we need to make it a bit more out of the book. So you have floor mats, for example, you have fridge magnets. All our kids love fridge magnets, so why not get them Arabic alphabets with the fridge magnets? Or teach the letters using funny stories. So for example, there's this Qur'anophonics. If you search it on YouTube, you'll get it, or on Instagram. Qur'anophonics, what they've done is created a story for each letter. And the reason why is so that it's A, memorable, but B, it allows you to pronounce the tough letters easier. The reason why is because it distracts you from that. So for example, the letter kha. For the letter kha, a lot of us would say either ka or qa or not be able to pronounce the kha properly. But now if you try and explain to a kid, okay, make sure, or explain to ourselves, make sure you're scraping the top part of the throat, make sure you're doing it properly, and then now you're trying to focus on that, and then you get distracted with all of that. A quick story, letter kha, sick person wearing a hat, woolly hat with a bobble on top, so that signifies the dot on top. So again, the stories are behind trying to identify the letters as well. And the person is coughing a lot. And how do they cough? Kha, kha, kha. And naturally, the kid, instead of focusing on the scraping of the throat, is focusing on coughing funnily. And they find that funny, but also they get it perfect first time, each time. So those are things that we can do. Other stuff, so I don't know if cocoa melon is a thing here. It's very much a thing in the UK. It was a thing in Nairobi. I don't know about Mombasa. But cocoa melon is something that's fantastic to keep your kids occupied. But when you stop it, they create a big fujo, if you want to say that. Why are you stopping it and all? You have another argument. But what's happening at the end of it, they're not learning much out of it. But one thing that we need to understand is, instead of complaining about stopping cocomelon and always having a fight, we need to remember that we're the ones that introduced cocomelon or these kind of videos to our kids in the first place. They were not born and asking for videos like cocomelon. So we need to understand that we're in charge of feeding our kids and ourselves the right kind of data and the right kind of videos. So therefore, there's so many amazing videos online to show us in very vibrant colors, in very interesting ways, something that's very engaging, the letters, the sounds, the surahs. Also another thing is that kids learn well from kids. So there's this story of Maryam Masood. She's in America. She's memorized the whole Quran. And her younger sister, who's probably around 7 now, she's memorized the whole Quran as well. And they're going through different stories on how to learn the Quran in fun and engaging ways through stories. And kids learn well from kids. Similarly, we have this on the end here with Surah Al-Fil, with the young animated kid reciting Surah Al-Fil so that they can memorize it. Other things, personalizing. How many of us all of us have had stickers? I remember coming back home and I see my bed full of Liverpool stickers and I think, oh man, what was I thinking? But it's a kid thing, right? Kids love stickers and they'll personalize everything and anything. But why don't we do that with the Quran? Because when you personalize something, it's yours. You feel a bit more attached to it, right? So this is something that I got, these Quran holders. On the left is a normal Quran holder. On the right is a luminous green butterfly Quran holder that I got from Kadmain just outside the Haram. And guess what my kids want to do? They want to recite Quran, not because I'm telling them to recite Quran, but because of the butterfly Quran holder. Because it's something that's fun and they want to do it. But that's not an issue because they're opening the Quran and want you to recite the Quran regardless of what it is for. Memorizing with actions. So, action is a brilliant way of memorizing surahs because the two things. One is enables yourself and your kids to understand what the surah is, because for you to act out the surah, you need to know what it's meaning. But the second thing is, especially for the difficult verses or something that's you need a bit more of a landmark, you use action so that it enables them to memorize the surahs easier. So for example, Surah Al-Qadr with angels, Surah Al-Kafirun is a sandwich surah. I'll leave you to deduce why sandwich and Surah Kafirun. So Kawthar is the tail surah, Surah Fil is the elephant, that's an easy one, and so on and so forth. Because of time, I wish I could go through it. It would be lovely to see some uncles do elephant surahs over here. Positive associations again, memorization challenges. So you start your kids off 5, 6, 7 surahs, they're excited, and all of a sudden, Sodan Josh, that goes down. How many more surahs left? But we still have this beautiful vision of my child, a young child, memorizing the whole 30th juz, right? So how do we get them to do it? Create these things. So there's this apple tree. Each apple denotes a surah in 30th juz. And whenever the child memorizes the surah, they get a smiley sticker. Now all of a sudden they want to finish memorizing their surah because they want a smiley sticker on their apple. So stuff like that. And more stuff in terms of memorable stuff. So teaching the rule of qalqala through a bouncy ball, Qul huwallahu ahad, for example, or a giraffe letter, using giraffe letters as mud letters, or gunnas with clapping. Then we go to the next phase. Now that's the recitation and the memorization phase over. Now we want to know, and we know that the Quran is more than a book of recitations, more than a book of memorization. It's a book for us to live, for us to see what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying so that we can implement in our lives and we can grow. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has done amazing stuff, and He knows what our fitrah is. So He's got a lot of akhlaqi verses in the Quran, short and very memorable, and very easy to memorize. And there are these things that, again, you can get it through this, the QR code, where, for example, a verse, وَقُولُوا لِلنَّاسِ حُسْنًا, and speak to man kindly. Speak to each other kindly. Now, how do you incorporate that in your life? So now, just the way we tell stories or we give examples to our kids, let's give a story, for example. What happens if you find someone shouting at someone else? Or what happens if you start shouting at your parents back? What is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saying? And then you go through the verse, وَقُولُوا لِلنَّاسِ حُسْنًا. And then you go through many examples, you make them memorize the short verse. And then what happens all of a sudden, when life gets the better and they're shouting back at you, or they're not speaking nicely, all you have to do is remind them, وَقُولُوا لِلنَّاسِ حُسْنًا. And they'll remember that. And then, more often than not, they'll remember it and they'll calm down. But these are beautiful ways of inculcating Quranic values at home. This is the main thing. When you talk about things, when you make them memorize these short verses, then all of a sudden, in the midst of life, you can just remind them of these short verses and tell them, what's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala telling us about this? So there's so many different examples on that. Making a big deal. And I don't know whether it's done purposely or not, but you know, when we have sports tournaments, for example, or academic achievements, there's a lot of money being thrown around, there's a lot of money being rewarded, and rightly so, to the winners, and big trophies and all of that. But then when it comes to the Quran or madrasa and stuff, naturally things get downgraded. Is it really worth it? All of this money, tournament, trophies and all of that. We need to make sure that we have that same buzz that there is around sports, around academic achievements, around career achievements, with the Quran, with Islamic achievements. And what happens is, again, you create this positive association. And you'll be able to motivate the kids in so many different ways. So for example, when you want your kids to memorize some surahs, one thing that we've done is the grandparents have agreed that they will buy a present for each surah that's memorized. That's thankful to my pocket that I don't have to buy big presents. The grandparents can buy the presents for them. But what's happening is that they get motivated, and they're looking forward to that, memorizing the next surah, so that they can get the next present. So we need to make sure that we're constantly doing that and making it a big deal. Or for example, when they've achieved something or memorized the next surah, don't be afraid to tell the family members, look, we memorized the surah. Okay, there's a balance, so make sure you don't overdo it and don't come across that you're boasting and everything. But also you need to look out for the signs for the kids. Yes, we have this beautiful vision of my kid must memorize by the age of 7, the whole of the Quran. But kids, obviously, they'll go through peaks and troughs. They will have this moment where they're enjoying the memorization. But also they'll have moments where they're not. So don't push them, don't over push them when they're not enjoying, because that will have a negative association. But by now I've given so many different examples that just because they're not into memorization doesn't mean you cannot have a relationship with the Quran. There's so many different ways of having a relationship with the Quran, through the akhlaqi phrases, through the different catchy phrases, through the different things that we can do with them. So just because they're not in the memorization phase just now, you can still have a relationship with the Quran through different things. But why all the hassle? Surely it was easier to sit them down on a bunker and cane them and they'll sit still, right? Why all this hassle and trying to find different things and buying different things and all of this? We've all read or heard Harry Potter here. Now, Harry Potter started off as a book, then many books, then movie, then many movies, and now in Orlando, in Universal Studios, there's a whole, you can live Harry Potter. You can experience how it is to go to Hogwarts Express, so you can buy all the stuff that the book You can taste it, you can feel it, you can do everything with it. And you'll see thousands, if not millions of people going there every year. And all of them are as excited as each other because they get to feel and touch and experience what they've been reading or what they've been seeing. And similarly, when you think about it, what was the purpose of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealing the Quran for us? So that we can learn from it, we can live it, we can experience what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to become, so that we can get closer to Him as much as possible. Now imagine if people are getting so excited and people are enjoying that experience just from a book written by J.K. Rowling. Now imagine if we can start experiencing and living the lessons from the Holy Quran. And who is the author of the Holy Quran? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That experience is going to be far greater, far superior than something that's written by a mere mortal. So one thing that we need to do and we need to understand is that the Holy Quran is there as a book of guidance. We need to make it that something that's living, that's alive, that's outside of all this, the fold of the Quran. We need to bring it to life, and we need to bring it to life through our everyday examples. And ultimately, the Holy Quran as a book of guidance needs to guide me through everything, big or small. Whether it's, if I'm seeing a packet of Dairy Fresh, a box of Dairy Fresh in Naivas, I need to know what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells me about Dairy Fresh in Naivas. Or whether it's achieving well in studies, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala definitely needs to tell me how to do well in studies. Or whether it's being successful in your career, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala needs to tell me. So regardless how mundane it is or how big the thing is, if it's a true book of guidance, and I certainly believe it's a true book of guidance, Allah needs to tell me exactly how to experience all of these. And there is. All we have to do is think about Quran differently. Change our perspective when it comes to the Quran. Know that there is everything. Nowadays, if we want to become successful, we want to think about growth. We're all about these self-help books or these podcasts about Tony Robbins and all of these guys. We get excited. But if you actually see what they're talking about, all those values are all instilled in the Quran. Everything is in the Quran. We just need to open it up. So things we've gone through, the mindsets in the Quran, sports in the Quran. But the question is, how do we do it? How do we take the Quran from a book of recitation that I'm reciting cover to cover all the time into something that I can live and think about everything that I do? So we'll do a quick example here, if that's okay. If someone can take the mic, please. So this painting I got last year in a curio shop near For Jesus. I loved it because it's a kid who has the biggest of smiles holding a simple cabbage or simple salad. But he's got the biggest of smiles, much bigger than if someone was holding a pot of gold. And it struck a chord with me. And reminded me of this verse. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, la in shakartum la azidannakum. And if you're grateful, Allah will increase you. How do you see this picture or this canvas in a curio shop, and how do you link that verse to this picture? Don't overthink it. Don't think about tafasir or anything. Just simple link, this and that. Sorry? Ahsantum, thanking whatever you have from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What else? Anything else? From the ladies? Okay, so we're on the right direction. No matter how big or small, whatever we have, we need to be thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because ultimately, He has given everything to us. But look at the words that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses. لَإِن شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ. It's changed. لَإِن شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ. Are we using our old software here? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, if you're grateful, what do we always translate it as? He will give us more. But it's not He will give us more. لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ. He will increase you. Remember, we're all on this journey towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And for us to be able to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we need to increase our capacity constantly. And every time we get closer, we do the right things, our capacity is increasing. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, no matter whatever you have in life, if you're thankful, He will increase us. So then we can take in more of those blessings and more of the lessons that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is sending to us, so that we can get closer to Him. The next one, I was climbing mountain with my friends in Dubai actually. And we thought, okay, we're climbing this mountain, it's very nice, we're having a nice time. What is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala telling us about the Quran? The verse here is, لو أنزلنا هذا القرآن على جبل لرأيته خاشعا متصدعا من خشية الله. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says if He sent down the Quran on the mountain, it would crumble. Now when I'm climbing that mountain, I'm looking at the mountain, I'm thinking, how great is it? How enormous is it? It's much stronger than me. But yet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says if He revealed the Quran onto the mountain, it would crumble. But yet our hearts are able to accept the Quran. What do we think about that then when we're relating the mountain crumbling, but yet our hearts are able to take the Quran? Anyone? So what I got from it, so again, there's a difference between reflection and tafsir. Tafsir, we leave it to the experts, because that's the true meaning in its essence of what the Quran, and only they can derive the true essence from the tafsir. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us a lot of times in the Quran, are you not pondering, are you not reflecting? These are all signs for you to reflect. It's not for us then to ask the alim, okay, what should I reflect on? It's for us to be able to constantly think about. Whenever we come across anything, any verse or something that jumps up to us, let's think about it. So let's think about this. Mountain, strong, but yet it crumbles. My heart, I think I'm weak compared to the mountain, but yet my heart can take the Quran. What does that tell me about my heart? Potential is endless. Potential is amazing. So next time when I think it's too big for me, or I've never done this before, or I can never achieve high grades, or I've never been involved in such a high position or a big project, remember, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given my heart that potential to be able to do it. Right? So, how do I come across this? It's not that I've memorized the whole Quran. Far from it. And these are not verses that came straight away to me. These are stuff that there are resources available now. Alhamdulillah, with the advent of technology and internet, these are resources that are so readily available. So the first thing is Quran.com. What Quran.com allows you to do is not only search for surahs or verse numbers, it allows you to search for things in English as well. So for example, when I went skiing in Toronto, and I kept on falling down a lot until like my 20th, 30th attempt, I skied the perfect slope. And I thought, okay, what's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala trying to teach me here? So I went into Quran.com and I thought, okay, maybe a lesson here is about perseverance. So I typed in perseverance on Quran.com and it gave me a whole list of verses about perseverance. That's how easy technology has made it. All you have to do is, okay, think. What have I learned about this? What value set is there for me to learn? Search for it on Quran.com and it'll come and you'll get a few verses about it. And then now you look into it, you want to read a bit more about it. There's this app called Quran Hadi. It's in English, Farsi and Arabic. It allows, and it's Shia based as well. It allows you to see the tafsir of individual verses. And it's very user savvy as well. You don't have to go through 30 volumes of tafsir. You just highlight that verse and you get the tafsir for that particular verse. And it's very succinct. It's not big. It allows you to go through the tafsir very easily. Or for example, if Sajjad uncle is lecturing and he mentions a verse and he forgets to give us the reference, then what can we do? There's this app called Tertil.ai. What it does is it allows you to search with voice. So let's say you know of a verse, for example, لَإِن شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ, but I don't know where it is, how to find in the Quran. Go into this app, click on search, recite لَإِن شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ. You don't even need to recite the whole verse. It will bring up exactly where it is. And then you can go into Quran Hadi and read the translation. And then these are resources that are available online. Scan the QR codes. Quranic Ocean is a lady who has a child of special needs. And she's she's sharing her story on how this special needs child has allowed her to improve her relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, improve her relationship with the Quran, and now she just shares so many different stories from the Quran. Brilliant. Arabic is a lady from our community in the UK, Nazmina Danji, and her understanding of the Quran, of Arabic, is far superior than my understanding of the English language. And she breaks it down so well. She's got courses online that you can do in your free time as well, to be able to understand the Quran better. Something about scriptures, the reason why I've put this one here is because her Quran, she started from Ali Quli Qara'i Quran, which is this big. And now her Quran is double or triple that size. Because what she does is, she will recite the Quran, she'll go through the meaning, she'll do her research, and she'll journal, and she'll write down her reflections of the Quran over there only. On Post-it notes, if Post-it notes enough, she'll add pages. And she's kept on adding pages until it's become quite that size. So that's something very inspirational. That if you're the writing type, if you're the journaling type, and there's some things that you really have, some few lessons that you've taken from the Quran, feel free to write it in the Quran. It's not disrespectful to write if you're going to take more from the Quran. So next steps. Cheeky plug, follow me on social media, but on Instagram or YouTube. But my main thing that I really want to push, I haven't amended this for Mombasa, but is this thing. Sessions with families. I get a lot of requests, people asking, can you teach my child Quran, can you teach my child Quran? But now I hope after this whole journey that it's not only about getting malims, it's about implementing in our life. And as a family, trying to see what we can do to improve our relationship with the Quran. Not just through recitation, but through actually living it. But it is difficult to know where to start or have a starting point. So this is what I do with people from around the world, Shia, Sunni, everyone. They will have sessions with me, and I will know a bit more about your life, a bit more about your journey with the Quran, and then see what the next steps could be to start taking our relationship with the Quran to that next level. And yes, time was a big thing. Time is a big issue nowadays, regardless of where in the world you live. And that's something we need to understand and appreciate. So it's not about taking over your life and saying, okay, I must recite Quran a juz a day, I must do half an hour of tafsir lectures and all of it. It's not about that. It's about trying and seeing how we can incorporate the Quran in our daily life. So we're still going about our work, we're still coming to mosque, we're still going to school, we're still playing our sports, but then also now seeing and trying to remind ourselves and thinking, okay, what's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala telling me about driving? What's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala telling me about going to school? What's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala telling me about playing sports or going to work? And then slowly but surely we'll start to create this habit where we'll be able to then empower ourselves and we'll be able to create this Quranic family together. We will be able to share with ourselves, our spouses, our kids, our community members, and that's what I do. Just 3 sessions just to get you started. It's not something that because when you get a malim, you have to constantly get them, and it's an endless journey. This has to be something that we need to empower ourselves so that we can improve ourselves. Just one last thing, please, if that's okay, if you don't mind. And this is back to the recitation element of it. This 3-step formula, sometimes we don't get a malim for whatever reason. A lack of availability, sometimes we're too embarrassed or shy to have a malim. So this 3-step formula will allow us to improve our recitation of the Quran by ourselves. We need a malim to give us feedback, but if we don't have, or if we want to consistently improve our recitation, this 3-step formula will really improve. What's the 3-step formula? Step 1, actively listen. You pick your reciter, Minshawi, Husari, Al-Afasi, these are the common ones. My current favorite is Ahmad al-Nufais. And the reason why I like him is because the way he recites, he really brings the meaning of the Quran to life through his recitation. Ahmad al-Nufais, brilliant. So you pick the reciter, you start actively listening. Let's say, for example, you want to improve your Surah Al-Fatiha. Take Surah Al-Fatiha, actively listen means open the Quran, follow, as opposed to while driving or doing your chores or going to sleep. So you actively follow so that you can see makharij of each letter, the tajweed rules he's applying, where he's pulling, where he's not pulling. Then also you take into consideration his voice and tune. Don't be shy of trying to recite with a tune as well. Because what that does is just makes it a bit more enjoyable to recite, allows you to bring the meaning to life through your voice as well. So don't be shy. remember, all of these reciters and all of us started off somewhere. No one started as a professional reciter. Then you finish Surah Al-Fatiha, active listening. Step 2 is now you listen and recite. You listen verse by verse, so you listen to Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, pause, and now you recite, trying to copy exactly what you've taken on board. Obviously, you won't be able to take on board everything, but it's a step-by-step process. The more you do it, the more you'll be able to take on board. So verse by verse until you finish that chapter, you finish what you want to do. And then step 3 is now you recite it yourself, trying to implement everything that you've taken on board. And also try and implement the voice and tune. The importance of active listening is that you'll take on things consciously and subconsciously. You'll take on the mukharij, the tajweed rules, the voice and tune, and you'll take on a lot more quicker than just listening. Now, okay. So we'll try and do this despite of the font being all over the place. I thought I'd do a quick Surah Al-Fatiha clinic, especially because we recite in our daily salah. It's very important that we get it spot on. So, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. The H is meant to be the Ha of Allah. Pointer is this one? What's the pointer? This one. Okay? So that's like the English H over there. Bismillahi. Nothing fancy. Okay? And then these glasses is for us to remember this Ha. Rahman and Rahim. And the reason why sometimes it's difficult for us to pronounce it from the middle part of the throat. But it's easy for us to think about, when you want to clean your glasses, sometimes what would you do? Or you want to draw on that window, what do we do? Right? So that's the pronunciation of Ha. We all can do that. So we can all pronounce the pronunciation of Ha. Rahman and Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Now the arrow is meant to be for the Ayn. Alameen. Now the pronunciation of Ayn, again, we need to differentiate with the Alif. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. That Alif is different to this Ayn, Alameen. Now think about this. When you go to the doctor, Dr. Hussein, for example, he puts that wooden stick on your tongue. At first he's being kind to you and he'll tell you to say Ah. And then he puts it deeper into your tongue. And then what's the pronunciation that comes out? Ah. Now that's the perfect pronunciation of the letter Ayn. We all can do it when we have a wooden stick in our tongue. So I'm sure we can all do it when we're not forced to do it. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. What's next? Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, again the Ha. Maliki Yawmiddin. Now, Quran, book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Naturally, we should smile when we recite it. So, other than 7 special elevated letters, we should smile when we're reciting the Quran. So, Maliki Yawmiddin. So, we show our teeth when we're reciting, and we'll recite it perfectly. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Again, show your teeth and you recite that perfectly. What about this? Ihdina. Now that downward pronunciation is for this. So there are 2 things here. Firstly, this is a kasra and this is a ha. Remember, this is ha for the letter H, right? So it won't be ihdina, it won't be ahdina. Ihdina. Everyone say ihdina. Ihdina. Okay, not ahdina, not ahdina. Ihdina as-sirat al-mustaqim. This is really important. I think 5 out of 10 people would say ahdina or ahdina in our community worldwide. Now, wow, this is going to be a challenge because everything's all over the place. Sirat al-ladina. Now, something that we need to bear in mind is these elevated letters. Sad, Bad, Ta. Okay? So everything with a smile other than elevated letters. 7 elevated letters in total. So these are 3 pairs and 1 lone letter. You have Sad and Dal, you have Ta and Va, you have Gha and Kha, and the lone letter is Qaf. Sirat al-ladina. Sad as opposed to Sin. Sirata? No. Sirata. A good way of pronouncing perfectly is by raising your neck. So for example, crossbar challenge. If you want to kick the football onto the crossbar, if you want to elevate the football, what will you do? You lean back so that you can elevate the football. So similarly, if you want to elevate the letters, you lean your neck back. Siratal ladina. Makes it a bit easier. So instead of siratal ladina, siratal ladina. An'amta alayhim ghayril, not ghayril, ghayril maghdubi. maghdubi. Now this dad is a special letter because it can be mistaken for za, can be mistaken for the, can be mistaken for dha. But this is maghdubi. Now, an easy way of pronouncing it. Where's uncle here? He's not around. Okay. I taught it to him like 5 years ago, and every time I come to Mombasa, he'll come to me and pronounce the letter dad. So remember when we were young, we used to have wobbly teeth. So think about this top tooth here, the side one here, as wobbly. Regardless of how wobbly it is, we'd always be tempted to play around with it with our tongue, right? So touch your tongue on this top tooth here, as if it's wobbly. Maghdu. There we go, uncle is here. Recite a salawat for him. Allah Muhammad wa al Muhammad. Maghdubi. Okay? So it's not maghdubi, your tongue is not sticking out. It's not dhu, it's not zu, it's dubi. Everyone say maghdubi. Ahsan. Waladdallin. Ahsantum. Not walazzalin, waladdallin, no. Waladdallin. Ahsantum. Okay. Shall we do a quick practice of the 3-step formula? Any volunteers? Before I choose you. Uncle, easy time, come. How are you? Bismillah. Hi. So, I want you to recite Surah Al-Fatiha for us, please. Don't worry about it. Just recite.
Taking my revenge,
No revenge. Don't worry. This is a safe space. No judgments, no nothing. We're all here to learn. Please, Surah Al-Fatiha.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين.
Ahsantum, mashallah. Really, really beautiful. Now, recitation is very, very good. Tweak a couple of things just so that we can take it to that next level. Okay? So the letter H, you're over pronouncing it. So it's becoming. I want you to pronounce Alhamdu. Alhamdu. How will you clean your chasma? Chasma kare te saaf karda. How will you clean it? Take it. What will you do? No, don't recite. Just what will you do? Yeah. Alhamdu. Ahsantum. Well done. Okay? Now, we'll do the 3-step formula. So, step 1 is I will recite. You actively listen to see where else we can improve. So, we have ha. Okay? And then step 2 is verse by verse. I will recite and then you recite. And then step 3, you'll recite yourself. Okay? I also want you to try and improve on your voice and tune. Okay? I want you to copy me. Sawa? أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Let me recite first.
Okay, sure.
Man, I've got the mic.
Okay, sure. I'll repeat.
الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Are we ready now? One verse at a time. I'll recite and then you copy me. But try and break the shackles, okay? I want you to try and copy me as much as possible, even the voice and tune.
I personally think I'm emphasizing too much on the makhraj.
Okay. So now I want you to enjoy it.
Thank you, sir.
It was, Quran is not only about makhraj, it's about enjoying it as well. Okay?
Yes, sir.
So try and focus on the voice and tune, let it go. Okay? بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. رحمن الرحيم.
We'll take out your chasma. Well done. Well done. So every time you come across ha, take out your chasmas, you'll remember it. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen.
Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen.
Put your chasmas closer.
Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen.
One more time.
Alhamdulillah.
How are you going to blow in your chasmas? Okay, now
Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen.
Ahsantum. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim.
Ar-Rahmanir Rahim.
Ahsantum. MashaAllah. Now a good idea to do what is to pause on ha. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim.
Ar-Rahmanir Rahim.
Ahsantum. Maliki Yawmiddin.
Maliki Yawmiddin.
Ahsantum. Very good. So we're following the tune as well. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين.
إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين.
أحسنتم. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم.
اهدنا الصراط المستقيم.
صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم.
صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم.
أحسنت. I want you to go high. صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم.
صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم.
أحسنتم. غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين.
غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين.
Ahsantum. Now step 3, you recite the whole Surah Fatiha yourself, taking on board what we've spoken about. Bismillah.
I get 2 out of 10.
Huh? No, you're doing really well. Don't worry. No, recite now yourself, the whole Surah Fatiha.
The whole sing again.
Based on ha, ayn, dad and your voice and tune. Bismillah. Bismillah.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim.
One more time.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim.
Okay, I'm holding the mic. I want you to blow on your glasses.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim.
Ahsantum.
Alhamdulillah.
One more time.
Alhamdulillah.
Don't overemphasize. Your chasmas are clean. You don't have to over clean them. Ahsantum.
Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen.
Okay.
Ar-Rahmanir Rahim.
So first one is perfect. Ar-Rahmanir.
Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. Malik Yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in.
Okay, now we're focusing on Makharij again. I want you to enjoy it. Enjoy. Iyyaka na'budu.
Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in.
اهدنا الصراط
اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين.
أحسنتم. Recite a loud salawat for him. Allahumma salli. Ahsantum. Thank you so much. Those chasmas will be cleaner than ever now, alhamdulillah. So, this goes to show you don't need a teacher to constantly improve your recitation. You're never too young or never too old to improve your recitation or start your Quranic journey, as long as there's consistency. And it's not about overhauling all at the same time. 5-10 minutes extra one day, as long as you're doing that 5-10 minutes every single day, consistency is key. Yeah? That's really, really important. So for example, if you're used to reciting 1 page a day, reduce it to half a page, or even maybe a quarter a page. But try doing the 3-step formula. So you still recite the same number of time. In terms of 10 minutes, you'll still be reciting 10 minutes, but it'll be more quality driven than quantity driven. Gone are the days where we have to finish the Quran. We don't have to finish the Quran. We have to recite the Quran properly. We have to think about what we're reciting. most importantly, we have to implement it for ourselves and for our family. So, inshallah, there's a few things that was beneficial. But if you have any questions, then feel free to ask me or feel free to catch me for the few days I'm here. Yes. That's why I put the QR codes. I've shared the slides, so maybe Akram can share them. Nouman Ali Khan has a very interesting way of looking at the Quran, and something that's very bite-sized as well. So there are quite a few, alhamdulillah, we have a lot of shuyukh that they live the Quran, Sheikh Bahmanpur, Sheikh Shomali and the likes. Brilliant, and they have so many things on YouTube. But what I liked about Nouman Ali Khan is that he has different kind of series, 5 minutes, 10-minute series. Granted, it's not going to be for everyone. Granted, you have to be careful because it's not from our sect as well. But the way he approaches the Quran, the way he's living the Quran, the way he's just understood the Quran is so much better than the normal person. So there's a lot to learn from that as well. Yes? You have a question? Ahsantum. Any questions from the ladies? Ji.
Assalamualaikum.
Assalam wa rahmatullah.
Wanted to ask, how do you pronounce the other her?
Which other ha?
The other one.
The English ha. Bismillahi.
Yes.
So that's like the letter H. I wouldn't do anything fancy. I wouldn't overemphasize on it. Because sometimes when we think, okay, Arabic, maybe try and overemphasize it. Then we would say Bismillahi and you wouldn't be able to differentiate between the two. So just to keep things simple, Bismillahi, he is reciting Quran. Similar, Bismillahi, Rahman, clean your glasses like uncle.
And the ihdinas.
Sorry, one.
The other line.
Which line?
Ihdinas sirah.
Ihdina. This one?
Usually when we as a Quran teacher, usually when I teach them, they always mix between these two.
Yeah, unfortunately it's a Khoja thing.
So how do I teach them?
Okay, so you mean the kasra of the E instead of the A or the ha?
No, this ha is very easy because the way you teach that we clean the glasses.
Yeah.
But the other one is a bit difficult.
Okay, so I think one thing that we need to, again, like we saw with Uncle here, we're trying to over-focus on the makharij. If we have a nice flow with the recitation, and we don't try and over-pronounce the letters unnecessarily, all we have to remember is that this is an English H. I wouldn't say he's reciting Quran, I would say he's reciting Quran. So you just make them practice ih. For example, just before you play sports, you warm up. So before you recite Quran, maybe this is an exercise you could tell them 5 times before reciting Quran, just say ih. So then they get used to it, and then when they come to it, then they'll say ihdina as-sirat.
So is it coming out from the heart or just a normal?
We're going to I think, sorry, Karen.
That's how we listen to the Malim, like he says ihdina as-siratal mustaqim. Like it's coming out from the heart. Is it that way or is just a light one?
So technically speaking, ha is from the bottom part of the throat. Ihdina. But I feel when we go through all these details and semantics, then it gets very confusing for our kids. So just give them nice, simple examples. Then if you want to try and go into Tajweed 2 and extra, then those are further conversations that we can have. But for the sake of general public and for the kids, let's try and not confuse them and go into further details.
So just normal recitation of her, that's it, yeah?
Yeah, ihdina as-sirat al-mustaqim.
Okay, thank you.
Ahsanta. You have a question? Assalamu alaikum. Give me 5. How are you? Okay, sorry. How do you balance? There's a question. How do you balance recitation with tafsir? So I think that one thing that, again, so based on this presentation, that now that we know the Quran is more than just a book of recitation, it's a book for us to be able to learn from, seek inspiration from, take guidance from. Maybe one simple thing that we can do is play the Kinder Surprise challenge. Do you know the Kinder Surprise, the chocolates? Right? Do you know the Kinder chocolates? So what's so good about it? You open the foil, you have the chocolate, and then what's the most exciting part? The toy inside. So similarly, every single day, I know the Quran is a book of guidance for me, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is holding my hand so that I can have the best day possible. And I know that the Quran is a miracle because although it's a set of verses that are revealed many years ago, the Quran, every verse is there, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking to me personally. Every page that I open, every verse that I open, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking to me personally. So, this is not istikhara, it's something that helps me really. I open a random page, the first couple of verses, I recite them, so I'm doing my recitation. I'll see the translation, so I'm seeing, so the first part is the foil and the chocolate, which is nice, with the foil, which is the recitation part. The chocolate is the translation, so I'm enjoying it a bit more, I'm knowing what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling me. But the most important part is me reflecting and reading a bit more about it. So using the resources, Quran, Hadi and all of that. That's the toy. That's the thing that will really occupy myself, that will really take me to that next level and help me enjoy my life a bit more by looking into a bit more about what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling me for that particular day. Seeing how in my particular moment, in that particular time, whatever is coming up, whatever I'm going through, hardships, ease, difficulties, the important meeting coming up, important exams, what is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala telling me through these verses? And just trying to think about it and keep those verses with you for the rest of the day. Anything that you go through, remember those set of verses. It's something that has worked a lot. I don't know if it's in any tafsir or any hadith or anything, but I've heard about it. I've done it personally. Whoever I've spoken to have done it, and alhamdulillah, it's really, really working. It's not istikhara. It's not something that I can claim that I've seen from any hadith book, but it's something that was taught to me and something that it really works. So maybe that's a fine balance. A couple of verses reciting, translation, a bit of tafsir, a bit of reading about it using the app or going through your different resources and thinking about it, keeping with you and reminding yourself constantly throughout the day about those set of verses. Ji. Mombasa, all my teachers are here. You're in the right place. Yes, Ji. Yeah.
And then you guided us, or rather you gave us examples of the apps. The rail, or rather that one shows that recitation is from the book. I think you've not mentioned about it, reciting from the app and reciting from the book itself, which is better, which is more effective, which is
so
something that's going to help us.
Yeah, so I think in terms of the Kinder Surprise Challenge, I think it covers it really well, because when you want to do it, you have to have the book, you have to have the open. It's not that you scroll and just stop on a verse, right? So you open the Quran, you recite from the Quran. The aim of the apps and the aim of technology is there to enable you to be able to read a bit more about the Quran easily. Not everyone has the luxury, not everyone has the opportunity to go further abroad and buy these different volumes, 30 volumes, 40 volumes of tafsir, and then open them and then go through them. The apps are making it so much easier, making the Quran a lot more accessible for us. So yes, both.
My question is, what will make you a better reciter, the apps or the book itself? Maybe in your experience you've come across this.
I think the feeling and the experience recited from a book, naturally, even when you're reading a book, it's different to reading on a Kindle. So yes, nothing beats paper, nothing beats the original source itself. So recite from the Quran, from the Mus'haf. We're told there's so much thawab reciting from the Mus'haf, but I think hand in hand, so that you can actually experience the Quran better through technology. أحسنتم. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين. توجه زيارة. السلام عليك يا رسول الله، السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين، السلام عليك يا حسن المجتبى، السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله الحسين والتسعة المعصومين من ذريتك، علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي والحجة بن الحسن، عجل الله فرجه وسهل الله مخرجه وظهورك، والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. I charge for